Greetings, I'm Dr. Mike Whitman, and this presentation is about me. One of the things that the KSU Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning recommends for online courses is that faculty record a lecture about themselves. This helps you, the student, better connect with your instructors as you get into online learning. Since we don't have that interaction before and after class, during breaks, walking down the hall that you might have with a physical class, this is designed to enrich our experiences and our interaction. This is a way for you to hear from me about me. So I'm not doing this simply because I'm arrogant, full of myself, a great person, just ask me kind of guy. I do it because I really do want you to understand who I am, where I come from, and what are my experiences that I bring to the table so you can feel that your academic progress, your degree, whether it be in my class or my majors, is the best that you can possibly obtain. Part of this is recorded sort of tongue-in-cheek. I do tend to joke around with my students when I teach physical classes. It's part of it is a stress mechanism. Whenever I get into an uncomfortable situation, I tend to make jokes. It's how I cope. I'm actually an introvert. If you've ever dealt with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, I'm an INTJ. It means I'm introverted, intuitive, thinking, and a little bit judgmental. So, let's begin this. I'm going to go over a little bit about me, where I came from, how I got here, what's my philosophy on teaching, life, the universe, and everything. So introducing about Dr. Mike Whitman, a legend in his own mind. Once I graduated from high school, I actually was enlisted in the U.S. Army Reserve. I was a radio teletype operator, my first experience with networking and information security. I was responsible for communication security. We dealt with encryption equipment as I set up radio networks and used what was the predecessor of a data communications network. We used radio teletype terminals to communicate over great distances. As I worked in the Army Reserves in my hometown area, I went to a junior college for a couple of years and then transferred over to Auburn University in my junior year. There, I completed a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration with a concentration in management degree, graduating and being commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army in 1986. I actually had an ROTC scholarship when I went to Auburn. I knew at the time that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an Army officer. I wanted to see the world. So once I was commissioned, went off to Fort Knox, Kentucky to Armor Officer Basic. So I'm a tanker. Was trained on M1 systems and M3 Bradley systems eventually. After completing my Officer's Basic, and by the way, I was rewarded as being the top academic student in my Officer's Basic course, went to the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment stationed in Germany. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. After a few years, decided that maybe that wasn't what I wanted to do. Found out that one of the things that the Army is famous for is promoting individuals to their highest level of incompetence. In other words, if you're good at a job, you get promoted. Once you get to where you're bad at a job, you stick there for a while. And I decided that was not the environment I wanted to work in. So I got out of the Army, transferred back to the reserves because I only had a 8-year commitment, 4-year commitment as an active duty officer. I went back to Auburn since I didn't remember anything about my undergraduate degree. Went back, got a master's in business administration, and while in that program, one of my professors, because I was concentrating in information systems, there was no such thing at Auburn like an MSIS degree at the time. I knew I had always been interested in computers. However, didn't really have there was no major for it at Auburn when I was an undergrad except in engineering, computer science and engineering, and I wasn't crazy about the math. So went back, got my MBA. As I was finishing it up, my instructors pulled me aside and said, "Hey, we think you'll be great for the PhD program." Looked around, figured out what a professor did, said, "Okay, this is the life for me." Transferred into the PhD program almost from minute one, I was a graduate teaching assistant. And at Auburn, that means that you were a de facto faculty member. You taught the class, you gave the exams, you graded all your own homework, you gave your own grades. There was no, I wasn't somebody's grading assistant. I ran the class. So I've been a professor since 1991. Completed my PhD in 1994. A little bit about what I was doing on active duty. My first real career, like I said, was with the United States Army, with one of the most distinguished military units of the time. It was one of the few units with a real-world mission. 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. My first squadron was stationed in Benlach, West Germany. I was overseas for 3 years in Germany. Great food, great beer. One of the things that I loved about it was the ease of travel in the area, but we actually had a real-world mission. We were the border patrol for the East German, West German, Czechoslovakian border. We were there when the wall came down. We like to think we contributed to that. I have been to East Berlin when there was an East Berlin. We were the first Americans into Czechoslovakia when the travel restrictions dropped. And this thing has some sort of weird auto timer on it. So, yeah, that's me at Grafenwehr, West Germany, as a young lieutenant, taking my platoon through Bradley gunnery. In other words, we were actually firing the Bushmaster 25mm main guns and tow missiles there. I actually, if you want to know more about the 2nd Cav, it's been redesignated a couple of times. When we were in it, it was Heavy Armored Cav. In other words, it was tanks. It has since been designated as a Light Cavalry, which means it was Humvees, and then most recently as a Striker, so it's more like light armored now. So, and after I got off active duty, I had a tour of duty as an officer in the Army Reserve. At that point in time, I worked for several years, eventually got transferred to the Individual Ready Reserve, where I was an instructor at Fort Knox, Kentucky for a little while, doing that sort of thing, a couple of weeks a year, every occasional weekend, that sort of stuff. When I was on active duty, after a couple of years as a platoon leader, I got a staff job. It's normal progression for lieutenants. 3 or 4 years on the line, then they transition you to a staff position. I was the assistant S3 for plans. My job was the maintenance of the go-to-war plans for that unit, in case the Russians ever came down the Hof Gap. Among my jobs was this, ADP SSO, Automated Data Processing System Security Officer. I was an ISO. That was a security manager. My job included evaluating and managing the security of information that the organization used. Yes, it was a military organization, but it just as sure as I'm sitting here, it was a security job. So I've been a security manager since 1989. Okay, just to clear that up. I was responsible for Tempest security testing. If you're not familiar with that, that was the protection of computing equipment from electromagnetic pulse. Also primarily responsible for the operations security and communications security regarding the unit's go-to-war plans. My office was actually in a vault. Every morning when I showed up for work, I had to open 2 giant combination locks, pull open the grating. The door on my office was rated for a .45 caliber pistol round, but no, they wouldn't let me test it. I kept asking. My academic history, once I went back, went to the master's, got my PhD, my first job was at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I was there for 4 years. When I went to Las Vegas, I was a single guy. There I met my wife and we started a family. And Las Vegas is a great place for single guys, not so much for family guys. After 4 years, I decided, you know, we had a brand new 1-year-old, decided, no, this isn't for me. We wanted to move back to be closer to my family, which is still in South Alabama. So logically, I found Kennesaw State University, hired by Dr. Martha Myers, who was the department chair at the time, and the department. So I started working as an associate professor, was an assistant professor in Las Vegas, an associate professor, got a promotion coming in the door at KSU. At the time, it was the Computer Science and Information Systems Department, and if you've been in the major for a couple of years, you realize that only last year we transitioned from the College of Science and Math. All of the Information Systems and Information Security faculty members transitioned to the Coles College of Business. I have, however, been the director of the KSU Center for Information Security Education since actually before 2004, but we kind of formalized it. I believe it was in January of 2002, so that actually should read 2002 to present. My summary of my overall experience: I've got over 21 years in the classroom as of this date. I started teaching my first class in June of 1991. I've got 12 years as a certified information security professional. I got my CISSP back then. And 7 years as a certified information security manager. Not easy exams. As I mentioned before, I was an ADP SSO back in '88, and I've had the military jobs I've had a lot of security responsibilities. Currently have over 100 publications in information security, including textbooks, articles, book chapters, and conference presentations, and dozens, and I do mean dozens, of professional consulting clients in security and security management. I'll talk a little bit more about those later. From a KSU perspective, not long after I got here, I was appointed as the Bachelor of Science in Information Systems coordinator. And I did a little over 2.5 years as the BSIS coordinator, and then I moved to the MSIS coordinator job, the director job, and I was the director of that for a few years. And then, actually sometime in 2004, Professor Mattard approached me with the idea of creating a Bachelor's of Science in Information Security and Assurance. We talked about it at length, and we said, finally, yeah, this is a good idea, and we co-developed that program from scratch. I was the inaugural coordinator and converted the ISA program from the BS to BBA in last year. As part of the change, as we moved to the College of Business, all of their undergraduate degrees are BBAs. Effective this fall, Professor Mattard, he's probably Dr. Mattard by the time you listen to this, will be taking over the responsibility of the BBA ISA coordinator. After being a program coordinator for 12 years, I've decided to just be a faculty member, focus on my teaching classes and my center obligations. I'll tell you about those a little bit more here in a minute. Currently, we have over 10 textbook titles in information security. All you got to do is go to Cengage.com, Google or search on my name or Professor Mattard's name, and you'll see our portfolio. There's a reason we have a portfolio. Every time we came up with a class we wanted to teach in security, there was no textbook, we would write the textbook. Our textbooks, especially Principles and Management of Information Security, those two books, have been adopted in over 450 universities globally as of last year. We haven't looked at the 2012 numbers yet. They won't come out here for a little while. I'm internationally recognized as a subject matter expert in information security and assurance education. Some of my accomplishments, especially here at KSU, like I said, we formed the Center for Information Security Education in 2002. That has two real functions right now, as we host an annual conference for faculty members where we talk about designing curriculum in information security. I've been a consultant at over 20-something universities where I go in, I sit down with them, I look at their security curriculum, I give them some advice on building security programs. I've worked with universities working on getting their Center of Excellence, and so on and so forth. So I've been all over the United States talking to universities all throughout the U.S. I've hosted an Information Security Curriculum Development Conference, the one that I was just mentioning, every year since 2003. So that's coming up on our 9th annual conference. And we usually have between 30 and 75 faculty members, usually 10 to 20 students attend, present papers, and discuss information security. We've held the Southeast Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition since 2006. We actually attended a presentation in 2005 where the University of Texas San Antonio talked about this annual cyber defense competition that they wanted to become a national competition, and they said anyone who hosts a regional competition will be the coordinator for that region. After we hosted it in 2006, we toyed with the ideas of rotating the competition to different institutions every year. We found out quickly that other institutions didn't have the same perspective on how the competition was to be run. We ran into some problems in 2007 with the administration of the competition and just decided from then on we're just going to run it ourselves. We've been collecting equipment since 2008 and have been the primary host of that competition since then. The winner of that competition goes on to the national competition, usually held in or around San Antonio, Texas. If you're interested in learning more about the cyber defense competition, send me an email and I'll post some additional information. I already mentioned when I got my certifications. At the time, it was to help me better understand some of the areas of security that I wasn't familiar with. If you just go out and you're an IT person and you decide to start working in security, you typically get exposed to a small area of security. The beauty of the CISSP is it's the domain of security. It's everything from cryptography to policy. So by studying for that certification, it helped me fill in some gaps that I had in my knowledge area from my previous experience. And then when they came out with the CISM, which was somewhere around 2005, 2006, I originally thought about getting grandfathered, but you had to have 3 years experience as a security manager, and I'd only had a couple as the center director at that time. Got it in 2007, and I've been a certified security manager ever since. The curriculum for that is interesting too. It really focuses on governance and planning, which I feel better prepares me for my role in the classroom lecturing on those subjects. We already talked about the building of the BSISA in 2004. In 2011, I had to redesign it with the help of my colleagues as a BBA for the AACSB recognition requirements. We originally got the NSA DHS National Center of Academic Excellence and Information Assurance Education recognition in 2004 and have been redesignated 2 other times. Recording this in June 2012. We actually are going in a couple of weeks to receive our redesignation certificate. That is a big deal, and if you want to know more about that, I got another slide on here. I'll be happy to talk more about that. I've designed over 15 courses at the graduate and undergraduate level on information security, and I usually, when I design a course, I'm usually the first person who teaches it. I've taught most of the classes in the ISA program with the exception of the cyber defense, server system security, and the programming class. On the personal note, in addition to having a wife and 3 wonderful kids, a bunch of dogs, stuff like that, second-degree black belt in Taekwondo. I received that in 2008. Since then, I've been studying Kempo Karate. Did a short stint in Jiu-Jitsu before I tore the ligaments in my left arm and had to have surgery. So I haven't done much Jiu-Jitsu since then. Fun stuff. The Center of Academic Excellence recognition is one that recognizes outstanding institutions throughout the United States that not only teach but practice information security. We were one of the first 65. The program was started, I believe, around 2000. And the first 7, there were 7 institutions at the time. When we got ours in 2004, we actually applied in 2003 and didn't get it because it's not an easy thing to get. Studied up, learned on exactly what information they were looking for and how they wanted it presented. In 2004, we received our first recognition when we were one of 65 institutions to receive it. Now there are over 150 institutions. We've received it 3 times. the first thing you have to do is map your curriculum to international security training standards. That's actually a separate recognition known as the Information Assurance Courseware Evaluation. And there are benefits to our students by taking our courses that are mapped. If you went out and got a job in the federal government, you would actually get a pay in security. You'd actually get a pay raise coming in the door because you've had training that they don't have to remediate. You get a jump on the process. Well, that's what we were told at the time. The second thing to do, that's the IACE recognition. Then the second thing is mapping our security research and teaching to a different set of standards. And if you want to learn more about those standards, there's a link there that you can go to that talks about the Center of Excellence program and why it's so important. We've been fortunate to be involved with it. The last year I was actually on the NSA committee to design, or I should say redesign, the redesignation criteria to make it different for those who are already centers of excellence so that you're not doing the exact same criteria. So we actually got to use my redesign criteria. I was part of that committee and was as sort of the primary architect. Other accomplishments, I've done a lot of consulting over my career, over 14 Fortune 1000 companies. Some consulting was as a security manager, other was security policy, other was a whole bunch of different topics, building training programs. In some cases, it was providing security training. In one case, it was a custom CISSP boot camp for managers. Since I have signed NDAs for all those, I can't tell you the names of them. But they're you'd recognize them if I did. We've also served as consultants to. I went to Washington D.C. and spoke at the U.S. Elections Commission on security and electronic or election systems. I also consulted with the Department of the Treasury. One of their branches needed security training, so Professor Mattern and I went up there and did that. We've served with the state for the Georgia Technology Authority. It's basically the CIO's shop. Gave them some consulting back in the day. Also was a consultant to the Georgia Secretary of State and KSU Center for Election Systems on system security. Overall have worked with over 23 to 30, I forget the exact number, institutions. The reason it's 30 is I went and visited 23, but I've had over a dozen that would send me email, and I would give them advice on building security programs and centers of excellence. We've literally had hundreds of faculty members who come to our security conference, and we have workshops where we sit down and work with them on building their programs. So if you add those in, it's literally over 100 different institutions that I've helped build their security programs. You may be familiar with my textbook publishing. Professor Mattern and I are involved in most of these. We've gotten Professor Green involved in a number, and I have a couple of other outside authors that I've worked with. Principles of Information Security is our flagship. It's in 4th edition at the time of this recording. We're under contract for Management 4th edition, currently developing IRDR 2nd edition. Readings and cases, a whole bunch of stuff. If you want more about the various texts, you can go out to Cengage.com, and that's actually 450 universities. We just got an update a little while ago globally. Yes, we're big in Australia, probably because they speak English, but they have a lot of security programs there too, and they've also got a lot of good security resources. Just as sort of my teaching philosophy, whenever I teach, whatever I teach, whether it be management information security, the IRDR class is actually considered an advanced management topic, focusing on contingency planning. So even in that class, we're talking about planning and policies and programs and practice and protection mechanisms and personnel, the 6 Ps of the management of information security. What I want my students to take away from those classes are the importance of policy planning and risk management, which is actually a prerequisite to a lot of IRDR activities. what I don't teach my students but expect them to learn anyway. I've been critiqued that I expect you to pick up stuff on your own. It's because I don't expect you to, I don't have time to walk you through a lot of this stuff, but I can give you a task that requires you to pick up this kind of stuff on your own. Problem solving and creative thinking. Once upon a time there was a survey of employers saying, what are you looking for in a future employee? And the answer usually includes problem-solving ability, creative thinking, good communication skills, the ability to work well on your own as well as in a team. Now, some of the classes we have in the programs involve teams, and some of them involve independent work. Mine involve independent work. It's not because I don't want to do project work. Students, when they have an individual project that's too hard, tend to complain that it should be a group project, or I should make the project easier. That's not what I'm trying to reinforce to my students, is sometimes you have to do difficult work on your own. So the best thing to do is manage your time effectively so that it is a manageable task. I expect you from a technical standpoint to pick up a little bit about developing online presentations, a little bit of video rendering that supports that. Most of my classes have a presentation requirement, and that involves developing those skills. My research, consulting, and interaction with industry professionals, whether it be at conferences or other interactions. I'm also active in those industry conferences that you might see downtown with the ISSA chapter and Security Atlanta, a couple of the others like that. The industry focus, whenever you start talking about security management, they've been using the term GRC lately. That's their strategic level management emphasis. And GRC stands for governance, risk management, and compliance. And so that's what we've been kind of moving our classes are, especially in the management track, the ones that I teach, are to have a heavier emphasis on governance, risk management, and compliance. And so as I rewrite a textbook or even teach a class, I add material to supplement the existing material to give you more emphasis in those areas. What are my courses? Well, trust me, they're impossible if you fall behind. That's that time management function. I expect students to keep up. I give you recommendations, but the bottom line is they're self-paced. You can do all your work in the first month and then take a month off. Do another month's worth of work, take a month off, or get everything done in the first 6 weeks, take the rest of the semester off. It's up to you, but you've got to manage your time so that your assignments meet my criteria and are submitted in a timely manner. They are an actual implementation of policies. I'm teaching policy, so it would be hypocritical for me to bend policy trying to teach you how to enforce policy. So I make sure that I clearly outline in my policies what the expectations are, and then I hold my students to it. I'm not being mean. I'm just making sure that I practice what I preach. They are usually an exercise in problem solving. Students say, well, you didn't give us enough information. Well, guess what? If I didn't give you enough information, you got a couple of choices. You can sit around and gripe about it, or you can go out and find the information you need, or in some cases you simply state your assumptions and go from there. Especially with like the case projects, I give you a case that gives you an overview of an organization. It's up to you to fill in the blanks, and you simply say, here are my assertions. I assume that this company has this, can do this, needs this, and you go from there. So it's up to you. What they're not, I hear this all the time. Your classes are too hard. They're too hard. I want some wine. Just kidding. The classes are not easy, not by any stretch of the imagination. They're not hard, but they're not easy. Okay? If you keep up with the work, they're just busy. And that's not busy work. That's just I keep you engaged. Yes, I know you may have between 2 and 5 classes per semester, depending on your schedule, but this is an appropriate level of work. I've had this discussion several times with my colleagues. Appropriate level of work for a class at this level. And I have different class workloads for undergraduate and graduate. My classes are also not flexible. And flexible means, oh, I forgot to submit this assignment. Can you accept it later? No. I have given you a due date. I've told you on day one what I expected. In some cases, that means I gave you 3 to 4 months to get the job done. I'm not going to be flexible on the due date. The due dates are hard. You gotta step up, manage your time, and get the assignments in. And they're not hand-holding. In some cases, like I told, with that problem-solving thing, you're not going to have all the information you need. That's done on purpose. You are receiving industry-standard, cutting-edge information on the subject. That usually means that there isn't complete information. Now, there's a lot of the times I'll go out there and grab one of the new theories or trends in industry and implement it in my class. The FAIR methodology was one of those. Actually, industry's catching up with me. They're coming out with new certifications in FAIR methodologies, and they've asked me if I want to be one of the first industry or the first academic partners to make sure that students going out in the workplace have recognitions in risk management, and we're seriously looking at it at this time. So there's a lot of things that I get criticized for because this is my approach, and I'm telling you up front and now, this is what you can expect. It's hard. It's not easy. You're going to have several major assignments, 2 to 4, depending on the class. On my management of information security topics, there's usually a policy assignment, which is realistic. Actually, as a security manager, you may have to write dozens of policies. I expect you to write 4. There are templates provided. So anytime I give you a major assignment, I give you a template that shows you what it looks like. The funny thing is, I didn't used to give my students templates, and they complained it was too hard. So I tried to make it easier. I gave you a template. They still complain it's too hard. I reduced the scope of the project. They still complain it's too hard. Our consensus is students are going to complain that it's too hard regardless of what I do. So I've stopped making them easier because I've hit what I consider to be the bottom of what you can learn in my class, demonstrate to me in a project, and then would be expected to do in the real world in the discipline. Same thing with the risk assessment project. You actually use FAIR at the undergraduate level and Octave Allegro at the graduate level, both of which are becoming industry standard methodologies. One of my consulting gigs was I want to set up a risk assessment program. I've looked at 5 or 6 different methodologies, including all of the ones listed in the management book. Can you make a recommendation? What do I usually recommend? Depends on the organization. Big companies follow the NIST model. Smaller organizations follow the FAIR or Octave Allegro model. So I split them up and teach different ones at different levels. In the contingency class, IRDR, DRBC, depending on what your class is called, we're focusing on those contingency planning projects. There's a reason for it, because if you're working in the area, that's what you got to do, is the policies and planning associated with contingency plans. Grad students will typically find they get 1 or more research papers in lieu of one of these types of assignments. Why? Because it's grad school. It's not simply more undergraduate work. It's not a second bachelor's degree. It's all graduate work is considered to be research-oriented, such that when you're done, you could actually be a teacher in the field. We've hired a couple of faculty members in the department are former students of ours. In addition to Professor Green in security, we've got Professor Shade in IS, both of which are MSIS grads. So you've got to have that level of a knowledge when you get through with the programs. Every semester I get student feedback. Yes, I read every single word that's written. A copy goes to me and a copy goes to the department chair. And every year I have an annual review, just like anybody that works. As you sit down once a year with your boss and you say, how am I doing? What could I do better? What am I doing well? And every year I get something in every category. I get told you're hard but fair. I get told you should look for other ways to not make your projects easier, but to assist your students in completing the hard projects that you've got. This coming from my most recent discussion. They said that we're not going to argue rigor. Projects should be difficult. They should be a challenge. Students are paying good money to learn hard things. We should look for ways to enable them, and we've made some changes to the project every semester based on that philosophy. Enabling the students to do better. That's where the template came from. That's where some of the changes I implemented most recently. Some of my student feedback is good. Some of it's very good. Some of it's not. Some of it's downright mean and malicious. Some of them have gotten to where they claim that I don't care and I'm not a good teacher. This coming from somebody who's 20 years old and has had 4 teachers at the collegiate level in their entire life. I average 175 students a year. 21 years, that's almost 4,000 students in my entire career. Every semester I get 2 or 3 where students are mad, and what they do is they vent on those student comments. Okay, if it makes you feel better, good for you. 9 times out of 10, those who vent and talk about how terrible a teacher are got bad grades because they missed assignments and I wouldn't accept them late. And 9 times out of 10 on that, it's because they forgot, they got behind, they had other courses. This is college. Some of the good comments, I selected a random sample over the last 18 months just to give you an idea of what students say about me. I like the first one. I'm good at forcing you to manage your own time and figure things out on your own. Okay? Because sometimes that's how it's done. Clear expectations and clear information. I'm not going to read all these to you. Most of you probably don't care. But the idea is that for everyone that's good, I get one that's bad. Projects, it's too hard. Projects too long. And the funny thing is saying that the template is 50 pages would freak somebody out until they sit down and realize all you got to do is fill in some tables as part of that. So the amount of work is actually highly contingent upon the amount of effort you're willing to put into it. Those students who put in the appropriate amount of effort walk away with A's and B's. Those who don't, and go away mad. More bad, ridiculous. I'm ridiculous. My projects are time-consuming and dull because they didn't bother to learn the material before they tried to start the project. I despise writing policies and other security documents. Then don't go into information systems management or security management. It seems like he doesn't enjoy teaching. To an extent, I love teaching. You know, some things I thrive on. Some things are a job. Nobody out there loves 100% of their job. Throw material at you and say good luck. Hey, at least I said good luck. I'm not going to make your projects fun. The world isn't fun. So there's a lot of that I get that I read through it, I look at what I could learn from, and I move on. The ugly. Some people get mean. I think I own the world. Now my assignments are insane. Students rarely see this guy in person. It's called online learning. They didn't help you land a job in IT. Okay. I'm the rotten seed in the pumpkin patch of ISA professors. I love that one. Rotten seed in the pumpkin patch. Absolutely no experience. One of the reasons that I updated this presentation is because even though I tell students I've got experience in security, I've got real experience back from before there was security, back when it was computer security. And still I get these comments from somebody who has no experience telling me I have no experience. We actually had a student who told me I went out there and did research on risk assessment projects and yours are too hard. Somebody who obviously has no experience in industry doing full-blown risk management projects, which, to be truthful, a full-blown project over all the assets, over all the threats, will take months. I've given my students a snapshot, microcosm perspective on that's designed to take about 2 weeks worth of work. And I give you 4 months to do it. What do I learn from this? First thing I learned is some people just need to vent. So you can't really fight them for that. One of the things that I learned in the Army, and I have a lot of military perspectives on a lot of things, is that sometimes you just got to leave soldiers alone and let them vent about the boss. While they're working for you directly, they will give you their 110%, but the minute you walk away, they may talk about you behind your back. That's just the way people are. So don't take it personally. Look for what you can learn from it. Every semester I sit down with them, and then I usually talk about some of them with my ISA peers. We meet weekly. Okay? The ISA faculty member meet more than any other group on campus. We have lunch together once a week. Our research groups, myself, Professor Mattern, and Professor Green, meet another time a week. So that's twice a week I'm meeting most of the faculty for a couple of hours to discuss research projects, school projects, and then things like the security conference and the security cyber defense competition. So we're constantly dialoguing, and guess what? We talk about our students. We talk about our good students. We talk about our bad students. We mostly talk about our problem students. And you know what we find out? A student who's a problem in one class is usually a problem in another. And as a result, especially when you get into somebody submitting work from one class and another, trying to skate by, we usually find out about that before the student knows we found out about that. So there's a lot that students don't realize about how tightly knit the security group really is. My assignments are here to stay. They will be evolving. They may get harder in some areas. They may get easier in other areas. But a student complaining that my assignments are too hard, we should do away with them, is really giving me wishful thinking of, I wish somebody would just give me a degree and not make me earn it. That's the perspective I get from that. I sat down with my boss. At the time, it was the interim chair, Dr. Franza, and I have sat down with the dean and talked about rigor in undergraduate and graduate work, and we come to some conclusions that we agree on. Every now and then we come to one we don't agree on, but for the most part they let me make the decisions in my classes. That's the beauty of being a professor. For every bad comment I get, there's usually several good ones, and I only showed you a snapshot to kind of give you a perspective of what I deal with. Now, most of you don't have jobs where you're constantly critiqued. Unless you're working in customer service, you don't have to deal with that feedback. If you do work in customer service, you know what I'm talking about. A person is 10 times more likely to give you a bad comment than a good comment. Unless you're really, really good, you don't get a lot of good comments. If you're good, but somebody's having a bad day, you may get a bad comment. If somebody thinks that you're not good, you're going to get a bad comment. And my final thing that I learned is some people really need a hug, but they're not getting it from me. In 2012, some of the things that I pulled out from previous reviews that I'm putting in, more assignments available earlier. I used to do things like at the undergraduate level, my quizzes would be once every week available for 2 weeks. Students said, well, I'd like to get ahead on them. Is there any way to make the quizzes available earlier? Well, I talked to my colleagues about it, and a couple of them are actually doing that. They'll say, I'll give you the first 6 chapters quizzes, and they're all due at midterm. Now, the downside to that is that's more of me pushing time management off on my students. But I'm going to give it a try. We're going to make more assignments available from minute 1, due at different times during the semester. We are providing additional instruction on project methodologies. In other words, when I give you a project, I'm trying to add more supplemental lectures on the methodologies behind it, additional recordings, and additional information on making recordings, because that was the #1 area students griped about, because it was the one thing that I said, I want you to have an exercise in problem solving, figure out how to do this. Nobody taught me to make Camtasia recordings. I sat down and figured it out like most IT professionals have to do. Your company may not have the money to send you off to training, so you sit down and figure it out. And then you talk to your peers about it. I sat down, and between Professor Mattern and I, we've become quite proficient on making Camtasia recordings. There is no decrease in the complexity of the assignments. However, there is an increase in enabling student success in assignments. And that usually comes from supplemental lectures and supplemental recordings, different resources, different documents, etc., to help you learn what you need to learn. I also have converted some of my discussion areas into anonymous posting areas. I think the students needed more areas to vent, so that they could feel that they could say what was on their mind, right, wrong, or indifferent, without fear of retribution. So I took in some of my discussion areas, I've made them anonymous, and that will allow the student to come on and say something that they really didn't want to wait and say until they had a comment, and thus allow you to feel that you've been heard. I do reserve the right at any time, if somebody posts something that I feel is inappropriate, mean, or malicious, to just go in and delete that. But then again, it's my discussion board. I get a lot of discussion around Turnitin. Turnitin is a great tool. It allows you to better manage your writing assignments. It's actually not a tool for me. It's a tool for you. But I'm not getting rid of it. I love it, and I'm going to use it more. The purpose is to identify issues and avoid those issues associated with citations and plagiarism. It's not to catch students plagiarizing. And that's what students don't seem to realize. If I wanted to use it to catch you plagiarizing, I would make you submit your assignment but not allow you to see the results of the assessment. I go the other way. I allow you to submit your assignment as often as you want, knowing that Turnitin has a glitch. It's not a glitch. It's not a bug. It's a feature. In order to keep the engine from overloading, they restrict your reports to 1 for every 24 hours. So you upload it, you get your report, you work on it for a day, and then you can upload it again. You get the results, you make the changes. When you're done and happy with it, you upload it to Georgia View Vista. Eventually, we're replacing Georgia View Vista with Desire to Learn, which will be D2L, and we'll be using that tool. But it's up to you to get the score to the point to where it's acceptable, and that's usually like the 10 to 15% range. In some cases, I'll go up to 20-25% if there is a major template involved, like the projects. But with a research paper or a policy document, it's like 10 to 15%. Every semester, I play with that. The problem is if I said it was 10, everybody would come in at 10. If I said it was 20, everybody would come in at 20. Anything over 50 is automatically considered plagiarism. But the tool is for you to make sure that the work you provide is not misinterpreted as the work of others. So keep that in mind when you're going through the headache of I've got to get this in 48 hours in advance to make sure that TII has enough time to review it. I've actually pushed back many assignments to give you that extra 2 to 3 days to push it through. But you have to keep up on that time management. So this is to wrap up all about me. What should you take away from my presentation today and your experiences with me and my classes? One is I strongly suggest you listen to me and not your peers when it comes to the assignment. If somebody tells you this work is too hard, you're going to go in with that perspective. That's too hard that you can't do it. You're going to walk in and listen to me, and I'm going to say it's not hard, but it is challenging. You can do this if you manage your time. You'll find that when you're done, you will have gained far more from the experience than if you just walked in and said, oh, it's going to be too hard, I'm going to do a minimalist job on it, and then just try to move on. Make sure you carefully review all of the assignments, the materials, the criteria associated with your assignments. Students lose points when they don't follow instructions. That's another unassigned but evaluated aspect of my teaching, is that are you following the instructions? Give yourself plenty of time to do and redo the work, especially when it comes to that TII, which is the next bullet. Make sure you have time to process the feedback from TII. If you work hard, manage your schedule, and judge for yourself, you're going to find out this is a rewarding experience that you will actually use. The funny thing is this is one of those unappreciated fields that until somebody goes out there and does the job, they don't fully appreciate. One of the interesting aspects is the KSU Information Security Officer is one of our graduates. He said, and he pulled me aside one time and said, I just want to thank you for the classes you gave me. I am an information security manager now. I'm proud to say that. At the time I took your classes, I thought it was a lot of busy work, and then I started doing the job and realized it wasn't busy enough. So if you are going into IT or information security, you're going to be doing a lot of the stuff you learn in this class. Focus on it, do well, be successful. With regard to the class, if you have a question, email. In most of my classes, I have a discussion board, but if it's personal or private, send me an email. I tend to work from home because of my heavy research load. What students don't realize is that officially, less than half of my job is teaching a class. And in fact, since I'm teaching 2 classes, approximately 25% of my job is a single class. So that means 1 day out of 4 is dedicated to a class. And of course that's spread across a full 7-day week because I'm doing this right now as I'm sitting here on a Saturday. So I don't have a traditional Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. I have a 24/7 job that I work on when I can. So I typically work from home. I'm doing a lot of research work. I'm behind on doing some chapter reviews right now, but I wanted to make sure I got this recorded before the semester started. So I'm not one of those faculty members that's just sitting in the office that you can just drop in and unload your problems on, because I tend to avoid the office. There's traffic, there's travel, gas is expensive. I'm there whenever I'm needed and whenever I have to be, but for the most part, I work from home. And as a result, I rely on electronic communications more than I do on physical face-to-face communications. Some students have a problem dealing with that, and I hope you're not one of them. I do wish you the best of luck to get back to my be successful. Nothing would make me happier than everyone to do well in my class and go on to great and rewarding careers in their chosen fields. Other than that, that's about me. That's who I am. That's what I do. As Popeye says, I am what I am, and that's all that I am. Love me or hate me, you're not going to change me. So have a great semester.